So today, we're going to be looking at the next Halloween special for Ninja Turtles I wanted to look at this year. That being Mutants versus Monsters. Or the other way. I don't know, I only call it that because the DVD I have that has the episodes calls it that. And if you want to learn more about this DVD, well, you can go watch my Ninja Turtles DVD collection video. Anyways, unlike the last Halloween special we looked at, this time it'll be a 4-part storyline, not just one episode. So it will technically feel like an hour-and-a-half movie if you binge watch the whole thing. Nonetheless, let's get to episode 1. The first episode of this storyline starts off pretty similar to the last Halloween special we looked at, and it's mostly just kids going out trick-or-treating. And we get to see Casey and April doing it. However, we do get kind of a funny bit where one guy refuses to give Casey candy, so he pranks him by giving him an exploding jack-o'-lantern. And unfortunately for them, as they're wandering the streets, they come across werewolves, which they are able to fend off just fine. However, they also come across vampires, and one of them happens to bite Casey. We then cut to the Ninja Turtles, who are preparing for Halloween, and when they're all discussing what to wear for Halloween, Raphael says he's not going to wear anything and just go as is, leading to this funny line from Michelangelo.
You can always dress as a fairy princess.
That was one time!
But then the Turtles get a call from April asking for help and telling them the situation, and when they go to help her, they see that Casey has become a vampire and is rather strong and hard to fight. But thankfully, Mikey had a piece of garlic pizza on him, and they were able to restrain him with it. But right as they're thinking about what to do next, April gets bit. The Turtles then run off to try and find some place to hide with their friends, and when they think they're safe, they get attacked by the Frankenstein monster. And it's also around this time that April's vampire bite kicks in, and now the Turtles have no allies and are surrounded. But thankfully for them, a time gate opens up and their friend Renette comes in to save them. When they get to safety, Renette is able to explain that all this was caused by Savanti, and Mikey does bring up that they did defeat him the last time they encountered him. However, Renette was supposed to check up on the place he was banished to, and when she did, he ended up jumping her and stealing a time jumper, which is pretty much what caused him to do all this. So yeah, all this is her fault. And lo and behold, Savanti himself shows up to torment Renette for her failures. And when the Turtles try to fight him, they get pretty much nowhere, and right as he's about to destroy them, Renette opens up a time portal and sends them all to Egypt. Leo then asks why they're there, and Renette tells him this is right before Savanti recruited his first minion. However, the Time Scepter is low on power, and the plan is to practically go to every moment right before he got one of his monsters and hopefully stop him. And like I said, the Time Scepter is low on power, so they only got one shot to pull this off. And since they're already in Egypt, they go inside the temple to look for the mummy, and yeah, if you've seen any temple raiding movie or show or something from a video game, it's pretty much what you expect to happen. Like, they go in, they trigger some traps, they fight other creatures, they get attacked by a curse, and then they make it to the tomb. So, you know, basic stuff you would see in something like this. But unfortunately for them, going inside the tomb is what causes the Pharaoh to wake up. So yeah, oops. And right as he wakes up, Savanti shows up, and they do try to reason with the mummy to go back to sleep, but it doesn't work. So instead, they decide to fight him head on, and even that doesn't work. Even after Leonardo decapitates him, he's still moving. But after Donatello reads the sarcophagus, they get the idea to probably put him back in and seal him away. And with enough teamwork and effort, they do eventually put him away, stopping him once and for all. Nah, I'm just kidding. It doesn't work at all. He breaks free and Savanti takes him away. Despite their recent failure, the Time Scepter does still have enough energy for 2 more trips, so they decide to follow Savanti and hopefully stop him from getting more monsters for his army, ending episode 1. Okay, so that starts episode 1 of this storyline. Up to a pretty okay start. I say okay because the part where they go to Egypt feels kind of rushed. But I did enjoy making fun of their plan not working, so I am enjoying myself right now. The next episode picks up right where the last one left off, with the Turtles coming to a wormhole, and this time they land in a swamp. And Renette is able to give them more details to where they are, And apparently they're in Transylvania in the year 1300. And since there's going to be more people around, she also dresses them all up as monster hunters, as well as giving them some extra weapons. And that's mostly because the monster they're hunting this time is Dracula. And it's also around this time that we see that all the episodes start to have titles, this one being The Crypt of Dracula. And in case you were wondering, the first episode's title is technically The Curse of Savanti. I only know this because I looked it up online. The show's title cards don't show you this. Just wanted to answer that question in case any of you were wondering. The episode begins proper with a bunch of knights being attacked by werewolves. The turtles come to help, but they don't fare much better against them, and Raphael accidentally runs into the wolf pack's leader. And of course, he runs for his life, because why wouldn't you? And for a brief moment, he thinks he's safe, but then he runs into Dracula, making things even worse. Mostly for him. And while that's happening, we see the other turtles surrounded by the pack, but luckily for them, daytime comes and the wolves run away. They do quickly realize that Raph is missing, and when they meet up with him, they realize that he ain't feeling too good. So Leo proclaims they might as well defeat Dracula and get out as soon as possible. Later on, they all eventually make it to what looks to be a ghost town, but then a carriage comes up to them, and the guy inside says that everyone here died of the plague. And Raphael actually recognizes this person's voice for some reason, but before he can get an answer, he goes away. And as he leaves, Raphael gets even more sick. So they keep traveling until they come across what I assume to be gypsies. One of them does want to help them, but the other one's reluctant to, until Renette pays him in gold coins, in which he happily helps. While examining Raphael, they quickly realize that he's been bitten by Dracula, but luckily for them, as long as he doesn't bite another one of his own kind, the transformation won't be permanent. We then go to Dracula's castle, where we see Savanti trying to recruit Dracula, who refuses, mostly because he sees him as a demon from the underworld. But Savanti has some technology from the future with him, and with it, Dracula can't exactly say no to him. We then go back to the other turtles, where we see that Raphael is slowly becoming more and more like a vampire, but thankfully they have garlic to keep him at bay. And unfortunately, things just get worse when they get attacked by the Headless Horseman. Okay, granted he has a head now, but he takes it off and throws it at them, knocking the carriage over. And when this happens, one of the gypsies gets captured. But luckily for them, it was close to Dracula's castle. But when they get there, they get attacked by the werewolf again. And thankfully, they are able to restrain him to where they can actually kill him. But the gypsy lady tells them that the wolf is actually her father. And with this knowledge, Mikey gets the idea to ask Renette for a silver coin, and when he has it, he actually throws it in the werewolf's mouth, turning him into a human. But this victory is short-lived because Dracula kidnaps the girl and almost turns her into a vampire. She breaks free, and Leo almost gets a killing shot on Dracula, but unfortunately Raphael saves Dracula since, well, he's more vampire than turtle now. So of course they follow him into the dungeons of the castle, and when they do, they see Savanti showing off his monster army, or at least the ones he has, leading to a fight which unfortunately leads to the mummy ripping the silver coin out of the gypsy, causing him to turn to a werewolf again. And with this, Savanti has more than what he expected to get here, and retreats to another time period. And even worse for them, Renette says the Time Scepter only has enough energy left for one more time jump, so they end up going to Germany in the year 1818, right outside Frankenstein's castle, ending episode 2. Okay, so episode 2 I am so far liking more, which is a good sign showing that the story is getting better as it goes. And the stakes are much higher because Savanti now has more or less more allies, that being the Wolfman and Raphael. So, yeah, he gets more allies and we lose one. So far, I'm really enjoying this. Episode 3 starts out with someone robbing a gravesite, and we see it's the Hunchback, and not gonna lie, this is pretty intense, especially the part where that bag rips open and we get to see the hand of whoever he dug up. But shortly after doing this, he meets up with Savanti, who he's obviously afraid of, and Savanti asks to go see his master because they want his experiment. We then get the opening title card for the episode, that being the Frankenstein Project, And then the episode picks up right where the last one left off with all of them arriving in Germany. But things get bad when they discover that the Time Scepter is literally out of power. So even if they do succeed in stopping Savanti and saving Raph, they're pretty much stuck there until they could find a way to recharge it. We then cut back to the cemetery where we see that Raphael is still craving blood. But luckily for him, Savanti can detect the turtles and Renette close by. And so, with the mummy's magic, Raphael causes everyone to slow down through hallucinations. We then go to the laboratory of Victor Frankenstein, where we see that he's having trouble creating the formula to regenerate life. Oh, and by the way, I'm just going to call him Victor for the rest of the video. And luckily for him, Igor comes in with the rest of the body parts he needs to complete the body, as well as Savanti and Dracula. But luckily for them, Dracula, through mind tricks, is able to make Savanti look like a normal person. And with this, he gives Victor the last piece of the formula he needs to bring back the dead. We then cut back to the forest, where we see them all still hallucinating from the mummy's magic. But thankfully, Mikey is able to point out the obvious that none of this is real, so they have nothing to worry about. And because of this, Raphael gets angry and tries to bite them. But luckily for them, daytime comes, so he flees. And with that obstacle taken care of, they make their way to Frankenstein's castle. And when they do make it to Frankenstein's castle, Renette is able to convince Igor to let them in, saying that they're all sickly and they need help. And when they do eventually make it to Victor, his reaction is honestly kind of hilarious to me. Mostly because of how the voice actor delivered his line.
Sorry, I'm quite busy and can't accept new... What in the name of science are you?
Leo then tries to explain to him that they're from the future, but then Renette pulls him away, saying that this is a bad idea and it could alter history, despite how much of history they've altered already. And while discussing this, Donatello offers to help Victor with his experiment. We then get a little montage of them putting the monster together, and once they have it get struck by lightning, it of course comes to life. And Victor isn't really too happy with how he turned out, calling him an abomination, but Mikey stands up for him and even gives him a name. He calls him Frank. And right on cue, Savanti shows up to take the monster, and with Dracula's help, he makes Victor make the monster attack the turtles. Which is kind of weird, because the first thing he ever said to Frank was that he was an abomination, so why would he listen to him? But thankfully, it doesn't take too long for them to break him of Dracula's spell, but Savanti doesn't care since he has his monster army now. Frank still listens to Victor, I don't know why, but nonetheless, he tries to fight off Savanti, but unfortunately, Igor comes in trying to push him away with fire. However, he accidentally sets fire to the castle, and while the fire is breaking out, we do get a big fight between the turtles and all the monsters, which eventually leads up to the roof, where Renette gets the idea to maybe use a bolt of lightning to charge the Time Scepter, which thankfully works. And after that happens, we see a kind of heartwarming scene where Victor tries to reconcile with Frank, trying to call him his son. But unfortunately, before they can reconcile, the lab gets struck by lightning, causing a massive explosion. And when everyone makes it out, they thankfully have Raphael back, sort of, and Victor is honestly sad, thinking that Frank might have possibly died in the explosion. But thankfully, Renette is able to confirm with the Time Scepter that Frank is still alive, as well as Savanti's monster army. And we do eventually cut to Frank sitting in the woods all alone, and then Savanti shows up with the power of Dracula's mind control to take him as part of his army, which makes me question why he didn't just do that from the beginning. But nonetheless, this ends episode 3 with them heading to the future. Okay, so episode 3 I also really liked. Especially Victor. I love his interactions with everyone. Like how with Savanti, he had to have Dracula hypnotize him just so he can, not be scared. Unlike the Turtles where they just show up as is. And I do like his relationship with his creation, like how at first he rejects him, but over time by then he does try to reconcile. And it was sad that by the end he thought he was dead. Also, another question I have is, why wasn't Igor part of Savanti's group? Yeah, he was scared of them at first, but after the jealousy he had of the Turtles, you'd think he might want to help destroy them. I don't know, that was the one little nitpick I have about the episode. let's move on. Episode 4 starts out with them traveling to right before they left at the beginning of the journey, pretty much confirming that everything they did was more or less a giant waste of time. And things get even worse when Leo points out there's even more monsters than when they left. So, yeah, these guys aren't really doing too well. We then get our final title card for the storyline, Monsters Among Us, and then Raphael starts preaching about his two current masters, that being Savanti and Dracula, and right as he finishes, they all get attacked by monsters, causing them to run. But thankfully for them, Renette does find a way into the sewer where they can lay low and regroup and probably think of a better plan in the meantime. We then cut to Savanti, who is preaching about how he's going to get his revenge on everyone in the future who wronged him. However, the one thing he's still annoyed by is that he has no idea where the Ninja Turtles are hiding. But luckily for him, Dracula already took control of Casey and April at the beginning of the storyline, so he technically has a way to find them now. We then cut back to the lair where they're brainstorming ideas on how to hopefully stop Savanti, while Michelangelo is left to watch over Raphael while studying vampires with Ice Cream Kitty. And yes, for those of you who have not watched this version of the Ninja Turtles, they do have a pet cat that they accidentally mutated into ice cream. Just wanted to clear that up for people who are confused. Moving on. While tied up, Raphael hypnotizes Mikey into taking the garlic around his neck off, and when he does, he breaks free and steals the Time Scepter. Everyone, of course, tries to follow him, but unfortunately, the lair gets swarmed by monsters. And things only get worse because while they're being attacked, April ends up biting Donatello, slowly turning him into a vampire. But luckily, he does have enough free will to lead everyone out of the lair, and while running, they make their way to a creepy underground abandoned hospital where they take refuge. And Donnie isn't looking too good. We then cut back to Savanti, who is growing more impatient, waiting for the turtles and Renette to be destroyed. But right on time, Raphael comes with the Time Scepter. However, he gives it to Dracula, who tries to betray Savanti. But unfortunately, he has no idea how the Time Scepter works. And after this betrayal, Savanti sends the mummy to attack Dracula, who he ends up turning into dust. We then cut back underground where they're still trying to restrain Donnie from turning into a vampire. But the monsters make it to where they're hiding, and yeah, they almost break in, but unfortunately, Donnie gets turned into a full vampire right as they break in. So they make their way up topside because, of course, this place has an entrance to there. And when they do, they get ambushed by Savanti and Dracula, where they then begin to send their monsters to attack them. However, Mikey is somehow able to convince Frank to stop being hypnotized by Dracula, which somehow works, don't ask. And so, out of frustration, Dracula and Savanti try to use the Time Scepter to destroy them. But luckily for them, they're able to knock the Time Scepter out of their hand, and when Mikey tries to grab it, he accidentally activates it, sending everyone back to medieval times, where everyone starts to fight over the Time Scepter until Frank gets a hold of it and somehow sends everyone back to ancient Japan, which doesn't really make any sense, seeing how Dracula himself couldn't even figure out how to use this thing. So how did Frank get it to work? Anyways, after some more fighting, they end up causing the Time Scepter to activate again, this time sending everyone to Egypt. But then Savanti takes it and activates it once more, sending everyone to the dinosaur ages. And while fighting, Mikey gets the interesting idea to take out Dracula, seeing as how he has mind control and is probably controlling the other monsters. And they defeat him by literally impaling him through the heart with a wooden stake. And when they do, he kind of fades away into bones, while also setting Raphael and Donatello free of his control. And it's also around this time where Renette literally punches out Savanti and takes back the Time Scepter. And when she does, she sends everyone back to the future, while also leaving Savanti trapped here, seeing as how this is supposed to be where he was banished to the last time we saw him. And when they all make it back, Raphael is really happy to not be a vampire anymore, and the Wolfman, who is now a human again, is offered to go back to his own timeline by Renette, who he thankfully says yes to, as well as taking Frank to the future where he'll be more appreciated. And not before giving Mikey a goodbye kiss when she does all this. Yeah, they're kind of a thing in this show. And the whole storyline comes to an end with all of them going out trick-or-treating. Okay, that doesn't really make too much sense. Like, the beginning of this storyline took place on Halloween night, and now it's morning, so it's technically November 1st. And despite that little continuity error, I really enjoyed this. Unlike the last one, which was one episode and felt really short and sweet like an actual special, this one was 4 episodes and actually felt like an hour-and-a-half movie. And which begs the question, which one did you guys like more? Did you like the one from the 2003 show or the one from the 2012 show? Let me know in the comments. And I'd just like to say, Happy Halloween, and I hope you guys get good candy this year. Take care.